My name is Vincent Parker, and what I'm about to tell you was never meant for men who still believe loyalty is rewarded in corporate America. In the first 8 seconds of this story, understand this. When they smile the widest, they're already measuring how easily you can be erased. Rain was hammering down when security grabbed my elbows and walked me across the parking lot like I'd stolen something instead of built it. Through the glass walls of the executive floor, I could see them celebrating. Champagne flutes raised, music playing too loud for a Tuesday afternoon, balloons bouncing against the ceiling like proof that something old had just been killed. They were throwing a party for my replacement, Jessica Hunt, fresh MBA, perfect posture, that rehearsed confidence people mistake for competence. She stood at the center of it all, laughing as if the system she inherited was simple, clean, transferable, like it was furniture, like it didn't have a soul. My entire career sat in a cardboard box under my arm. 20 years of precision, sacrifice, and quiet mastery reduced to a damp coffee mug and tangled charging cables. And as they escorted me out, my boss, Andrew Stevens, lifted his glass and mouthed words I'll never forget. "She'll fix your mess." That's the moment something fundamental broke inside me. Not anger, not sadness. Awareness. You see, corporate life trains men to confuse visibility with value, titles with power, applause with security. But the truth lives in places they never celebrate, systems that work so well no one notices them, until the man who built them is gone. I wasn't fired because I failed. I was removed because I couldn't be explained. For 5 years, I built an invisible architecture that made an entire city move like water instead of metal. Ambulances cleared intersections before sirens screamed. Rush hour bent instead of snapping. Millions of lives flowed safely through patterns only I could see. And that scared them, because corporations don't fear incompetence. They fear dependency. They fear men whose work can't be simplified into slides or handed off during a catered meeting. So they replaced me with someone who looked easier to control. As the rain soaked through my jacket and the celebration continued behind bulletproof glass, I realized something most men never do until it's too late. In corporate America, being essential is dangerous. Being irreplaceable is unforgivable. And what happened next wasn't revenge, it was consequence. They tell you termination is a clean process, civil, professional, a necessary optimization. That's a lie. What actually happens is psychological amputation. They sever you from the identity you built inside those walls, then expect you to walk away thanking them for the opportunity. That night, my apartment felt like a stranger's place. The divorce had already hollowed it out years earlier. Sarah got tired of competing with traffic patterns and emergency simulations for my attention. The kids were grown, gone, living off a stability I just lost. When I set that soggy box on the kitchen floor, the silence pressed down harder than any executive meeting ever had. Here, that's what corporate life never warns you about. When your work is you, removal feels like erasure. I replayed the last 18 months in my head, the slow dismantling, team members reallocated, budgets optimized, meetings I'd suddenly stopped being invited to, all while I kept the system alive alone, 60-hour weeks maintaining something no one else fully understood. They called it progress. What it really was preparation. Andrew didn't wake up one morning and decide to fire me. The decision was engineered, sanitized, sold to the board as modernization. Jessica wasn't hired to help me, she was hired to replace me without confrontation. And she did what replacements always do, she questioned the method, not the outcome. Wouldn't a traditional framework be more sustainable? She asked, smiling like curiosity was innocence. That question told me everything. Men who have never carried real consequences believe theory is safer than intuition. They don't understand that systems managing real lives can't be boxed into textbooks. I built something that adapted to weather, human impatience, panic, accidents, emergency response, all the chaos charts can't predict. It worked because I'd learned the city the way a hunter learns terrain, slowly, painfully, personally, and I never documented the most important parts. Not out of ego, out of necessity. Some things live in judgment, not manuals. That's what Andrew never understood. He thought knowledge could be extracted, transferred, owned. Corporate leaders love to believe everything is replaceable because it keeps them comfortable. It lets them sleep at night after escorting men like me into the rain. But systems don't forget their creators, and neither do consequences. By the time I went to bed that night, soaked jacket hanging uselessly by the door, I already knew what was coming. Not because I wished for it, but because I'd seen it happen before to other men in other buildings under different logos. This time, I was just standing on the other side of the glass. The second day after you're erased is worse than the first. The shock wears off. The reality doesn't. No emails, no calls, no carefully worded HR follow-ups pretending to care about your transition. Just silence. The kind that tells you they believe they've already won. That silence is confidence. They were still celebrating, still convincing themselves they'd made a brave, visionary decision, still telling each other that whatever I'd built could be reverse engineered by someone with the right credentials and a clean slide deck. That's the first lie corporations tell themselves after they remove a builder. The system is the asset. The man is incidental. I spent that day on my balcony, watching the city breathe. Traffic lights flickered like a living organism. Streams of headlights curved and split exactly where they were supposed to. Even without touching a keyboard, I could feel the system running, like a pulse I'd memorized over years of listening. Most men never experience this, watching something you created continue without you for now. That for now is everything. Around noon, my phone rang. Jessica's name lit up the screen. I didn't answer. 3 minutes later, it rang again. Then again. By evening, I counted 12 missed calls. No voicemail, no text, just panic trying to maintain dignity. That's when the illusion cracked. Here's a truth hidden in corporate life. Competence makes noise when it fails. Incompetence panics in silence. If she truly understood what she'd inherited, she wouldn't be calling me. She'd be working. She'd be fixing. She'd be calm. But she wasn't calm. Because the system wasn't reacting to her inputs the way the models said it should. Because real-world architecture doesn't respect credentials, it responds to understanding. I didn't feel satisfaction yet. That came later. What I felt was confirmation. The system wasn't breaking out of spite. It was behaving exactly as designed, adapting dynamically to conditions Jessica didn't even know existed. You see, I didn't build something static. I built something that learned me. And when you remove the man who taught it how to think, it doesn't rebel, it exposes. By midnight, my phone buzzed again. 19 missed calls. I sat on the bedroom floor surrounded by old notebooks, handwritten equations, diagrams, marginal notes no one else could decipher. That's when I slept peacefully for the first time in years, not because I was free, but because I knew the next phase had already begun, and I wasn't chasing revenge. I was waiting for gravity to finish its work. Morning arrived without urgency. That alone felt illegal. No alarms. No emergency dashboards. No messages screaming that something somewhere had gone wrong. Just sunlight spilling across my living room like the city itself was exhaling. Then my phone buzzed. Not Jessica this time. Nicole. She was the only junior engineer they hadn't cut when the optimization started. Smart, quiet, observant. The kind of person corporations keep around because they carry institutional memory without demanding credit. Her voice was low, fast, controlled panic barely holding together. It's falling apart. I didn't respond. Silence is a tool when used deliberately. The North Quadrant grid locked up yesterday afternoon, she continued. Ambulances couldn't get through. They had to dispatch helicopters. 3 emergencies. Real people, real consequences. I closed my eyes, not from guilt, from recognition. This wasn't failure. This was removal of stabilizing intelligence. Jessica keeps trying to recalibrate using standard parameters, Nicole said. Every adjustment makes it worse. Andrew's losing his mind. The mayor called twice. Of course she did. Political systems hate unpredictability more than incompetence. And unpredictability is what happens when you tear out the brain of something you don't understand. They need you, Nicole said finally. No, I replied calmly. They fired me. That sentence surprised both of us with how clean it sounded. No bitterness, no tremor, just fact. Nicole hesitated. People are suffering. That was the only leverage left. And Andrew knew it. An hour later my doorbell rang. I already knew who it would be. Andrew Stevens stood there like a man who'd aged 10 years in 2 days, tie loose, hair uncombed, eyes darting past me as if the solution might be hiding somewhere inside my apartment. "Vincent," he said, forcing a smile. "Can I come in?" I didn't move. "We need to talk," he added, professionally. I leaned against the doorframe. "I don't work for you anymore. Remember the escort, the champagne?" He flinched. "That was unfortunate timing," he said. "No," I corrected. "That was intention. This is the moment most men fail. They rush to be needed again. They confuse responsibility with obligation. They step back into systems that already prove they'll discard you when convenient." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't threat. I let him stand there because the power had shifted and he knew it. And when a system realizes it's bleeding, it doesn't ask politely. It begs, and I was just getting started. Andrew finally spoke again, softer now, like a man negotiating with gravity. "Just tell me what it would take." There it was, not an apology, not accountability, a transaction. I studied him the way you study a system you once designed, already knowing where the pressure points are, already seeing which components will fail first. "You don't need me to fix it," I said. "You need me to own it again." He swallowed. "We can discuss a consulting arrangement." I almost smiled. This is where men like Andrew reveal the lie they live inside. They believe authority is permanent, that titles protect them, that the system will always bend back into shape if they apply enough pressure. But systems don't respect titles, they respect architecture. "You don't understand what you broke," I said. "That's why you replaced me with a framework." Andrew exhaled sharply. "Vincent, people could die." "Yes," I said calmly. "And that's on the people who decided knowledge was interchangeable." His face hardened. "Are you saying you won't help?" I stepped aside then, just enough to let him see the notebook stacked neatly on my desk. 5 years of handwritten logic, margins full of corrections no software could generate, diagrams built on intuition, not templates. "I'm saying this system was never yours," I replied. "You rented outcomes. You didn't own understanding." That silence again, heavy, uncomfortable. Here's what men watching this need to hear, even if it stings. Corporations don't reward irreplaceability. They punish it, because what can't be replaced can't be controlled. Andrew finally nodded, slow and defeated. "What do you want?" That question, asked sincerely, is rare, dangerous, transformative. "I want the truth documented," I said. "In writing, that the failure wasn't technical, it was managerial. I want my termination reversed publicly. I want my system legally recognized as proprietary intellectual architecture. And I want Jessica removed from operational authority." His eyes widened. "That's impossible." "No," I said. "It's expensive." I let him sit with that. "Because here's the real revenge no one talks about, not destruction, not humiliation, repositioning. I wasn't trying to burn the city. I was forcing the system to acknowledge the invisible men it survives on." Andrew asked for time. I gave him 12 hours. Because when a system starts to fail publicly, time is the only currency it doesn't have. And somewhere across the city, traffic lights were blinking red in patterns that didn't make sense anymore. Just like the people who thought replacing me would simplify things. The lesson was only beginning to surface. And soon, everyone would feel it. By sunset, the city was choking. Not metaphorically, literally. Intersections that once flowed like veins were clotting. Emergency sirens echoed longer than they should. Social media filled with videos, people filming standstill traffic, ambulances trapped behind confused drivers, officers manually directing intersections like it was the 1980s. This is what happens when invisible systems fail. The public doesn't see code collapse. They feel time distort. They feel stress rise. They feel trust erode. And upstairs, in glass offices and emergency boardrooms, men like Andrew were learning a brutal truth. You can't PowerPoint your way out of physics. At 8:17 p.m., my phone rang again. Unknown number, I answered. Mr. Parker, a woman said, voice sharp, controlled. This is Deputy Mayor Collins. We've been informed you were the principal architect of the city's traffic optimization system. Informed by who? I asked. A pause. By everyone who's panicking. Good. She didn't threaten. She didn't flatter. She did something smarter. She told the truth. We're facing a cascading failure, she said. And we're being told the system cannot be stabilized without you. I walked to the window and looked out at the city I'd memorized street by street. Not emotionally, structurally, like a living circuit board. Then you're being told the truth, I replied. What would it take for you to step in, she asked. Interesting, she didn't say return, or help, or fix, step in. I won't operate under the authority of people who don't understand what they're commanding, I said. And I won't be used as a liability shield for executive mistakes. Another pause, longer this time. What do you propose? I closed my eyes not to think but to confirm what I already knew. I'll stabilize the system remotely, I said. Temporarily, no public statements, no press, no victory laps. You will give Andrew and the board exactly 48 hours to do what they should have done months ago. And if they do, then the system will revert to baseline protocols, I said, which are safe, legal, and completely inadequate. She understood immediately. Baseline meant gridlock, embarrassment, political fallout. I'll make the call, she said. After we hung up, I sat back down at my desk and opened my laptop for the first time since being fired. I didn't rush. Because when power shifts, you do scramble. You move with precision. This wasn't revenge. This was correction. And correction always hurts more than destruction because it forces recognition. Tomorrow they'd stop celebrating and start confessing. Here's the part they never teach you. The moment a system starts begging the man it discarded, it's already too late to save its pride. All it can do now is negotiate survival. By morning, the stabilization held, but barely. I'd adjusted flow thresholds just enough to stop emergency vehicles from stalling. Nothing optimized, nothing elegant, just enough to keep headlines from turning into indictments. That was intentional. At 9:03 a.m., Andrew called again, not frantic this time, careful, polished, like a man who'd spent all night being coached by lawyers and PR handlers. The board is meeting, he said. They're reconsidering certain decisions. Reconsidering, that word corporations use when they mean we panicked. I'm not interested in reconsideration, I said. I'm interested in acknowledgement. There was movement on his end, papers, murmured voices. He put me on hold without asking. While I waited, let me pull you closer because what I'm about to say is the reason this story matters to you. If you are competent in a system you don't control, you are not powerful, you are useful. And usefulness is disposable. That's the trap. They don't replace you because you failed. They replace you because you made them uncomfortable, because your understanding exposed their ignorance, because your presence reminded them they were pretending. Andrew came back on the line. They're prepared to reinstate you as lead systems authority, he said, with expanded oversight. I laughed once, quiet, sharp. You're still thinking in titles, I said. I'm thinking in leverage. Then I said the thing that changed everything. Before we go any further, I want you to listen, and I want every man watching this to listen too. This is the moment, if you've ever been sidelined, if you've ever been replaced by someone louder but shallower. If you've ever watched a system celebrate while standing on your shoulders, I want you to comment this phrase right now. Type it. Don't think, don't hesitate. I am not replaceable. Then type it again. I am not replaceable. This isn't for the algorithm, it's for alignment, because once you accept that truth, you stop negotiating your worth from a position of fear. Back to Andrew. I will not return as an employee, I said. I will not report to you. I will not train my replacement. Silence. I will operate as an independent authority, I continued, with contractual veto power over any system changes. You will document that my removal caused the failure, publicly, permanently. And Jessica, he asked quietly. She doesn't touch my system again, I said. ever. The board didn't like it, but the city didn't care what the board liked. And when survival is on the table, ideology disappears fast. They agreed. Not because I demanded it, because they had no other move. And that's when the real descent began. You think victory feels loud. It doesn't. It feels quiet, like the moment a storm passes and the air becomes unnaturally still. By noon, the paperwork was moving faster than it ever had when I worked there. Funny how urgency clarifies priorities. Contracts that once took months were suddenly reviewed in hours. Legal language bent. Power realigned. I didn't step back into the building. That mattered. When a system removes you publicly, your return must never look like compliance. It must look like inevitability. I worked from my apartment, city maps spread across 3 monitors, notebooks open like surgical instruments. I didn't fix the system. I reclaimed it, restored the logic Jessica had overwritten with theory, reconnected adaptive feedback loops she'd flattened into templates, and within minutes traffic began to breathe again. Not dramatically, not perfectly, naturally. Nicole texted me one word: unreal. Across town, Andrew stood in front of the board and explained carefully how removing legacy thinking had nearly paralyzed a city, how conventional frameworks failed when reality refused to behave like a case study. No one laughed this time. Jessica didn't call me again. She didn't need to. Her career didn't end in flames. Those are for movies. Real corporate deaths are quieter. A role redefined. A responsibility reallocated. A rising star slowly dimmed by association with failure she never understood. That's another truth they won't tell you. Revenge doesn't require cruelty. It requires clarity. That evening, the deputy mayor called back. "We're issuing a statement tomorrow," she said, attributing the disruption to structural oversight failures and crediting you for system stabilization. "Good," I replied. "You're aware this puts you in a visible position," she added. I smiled. Visibility is only dangerous when you don't control the narrative. After we hung up, I sat back and felt something I hadn't felt in years: space. No longer shrinking myself to fit boardroom egos. No longer translating complex truths into sound bites for people who didn't listen. I thought about the men watching this right now. The ones grinding quietly. The ones being told to simplify what they know can't be simplified. The ones watching less capable people climb over them using confidence as camouflage. Here's the forbidden knowledge: systems don't run on charisma. They run on men who see what others can't and stay silent until it matters. If you're one of those men, understand this: you don't need revenge. You need positioning, because when the system fails, and it always does, it will come looking for the mind it discarded. The only question is whether you'll be ready to name your price. And I was. The city moved again that night, but nothing was the same anymore. Power doesn't announce itself when it arrives, it settles in. The next week felt like watching a machine recalibrate after a near-fatal error. Meetings were quieter, emails were shorter, decisions were slower, heavier, made by people suddenly aware that confidence without comprehension is a liability. Andrew didn't call me anymore, he emailed, carefully, formally. Like a man writing to something he no longer controlled but deeply feared offending. That shift matters more than any apology, because respect given after loss is real respect. I began receiving invitations I didn't ask for: city planners, infrastructure consultants. Even a federal transportation task force quietly reached out. Not flashy, not public, just a simple question repeated in different voices: "How did you see this coming?" Here's the truth: I gave none of them, because it isn't safe knowledge for institutions. I didn't see the failure coming. I saw the blindness. Every collapse starts there. They stopped listening to the man who understood the system because listening would have required humility. And humility doesn't survive well in executive environments. Jessica resigned 2 weeks later. Official reason: pursuing new opportunities. Unofficial reality: she'd learned the most painful lesson corporate life teaches: credentials don't substitute for consequence. She wasn't evil, she wasn't stupid. She was inexperienced in a way no MBA prepares you for, and she paid for it, not with humiliation, with irrelevance. Meanwhile, my system stabilized fully. Emergency response times dropped below even our best projections. The mayor took credit publicly, of course she did, but in private, doors opened. And I didn't walk through all of them. That's another rule they never tell you. When power returns to you, discretion becomes your shield. I declined roles, deferred committees, refused to be absorbed again. Because absorption is how systems neutralize threats, I stayed external, independent, contractually untouchable. At night, I'd sit on my balcony again, watching traffic flow the way it was always meant to, organic, adaptive, alive. And I'd think about how close it came to breaking permanently. Not because of budget cuts, not because of technology, because of ego. If you're still listening, this is the moment the story stops being about me. It's about you. One day, the system you serve will decide you're inconvenient, too slow, too deep, too hard to explain in a slide deck. They'll replace you with something shinier. Let them. But when they do, take this with you, document everything. Detach emotionally. Never give away the architecture of your mind. Because when the celebration ends and the failure begins, they won't ask who was nicest. They'll ask who understands. And the man who understands decides how the story ends. I know I did. And I never needed to raise my voice to do it.